Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about the recent tragedy in Florida, a devastating truck crash where an illegal U-turn by a tractor trailer led to 3 deaths. Sagi will break down what happened, why these turns are so dangerous, and the rights families have after a wrongful death trucking accident. Sagi, good to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Thank you.
Well, this is definitely a sad story, as we were talking about before we hit record. It's made national news. So what do we know about this crash where the driver made an illegal U-turn and 3 people unfortunately lost their lives?
Right. So I'll give you some of the basic facts that I know of. It was a driver on the Turnpike who was in an 18-wheeler, a semi with a trailer portion. And as he's heading on the Turnpike, there is a sign there that says for official use only. So you're not allowed to make a U-turn there, only officials. And when you think of officials, think about the state police or the Florida Highway Patrol in this case. And what happened was he's in the lane closest to the grass area, away from the median. So imagine 2 lanes going in one direction. And this driver looks to make a U-turn. For what reason? We have no idea. Why couldn't he wait till the next exit? And just for people who don't know Florida's Turnpike, sometimes between exits, you can go about 30, 40 miles before there's an exit. So I'm thinking he might have missed his exit or maybe wanted to go to a rest stop. And as a result, he ends up doing this illegal U-turn, which I would never do, even in a car. Because
I was just going to say that. I would not even do that in a car. I mean, obviously it's illegal, but also on highways going that fast, it would just scare the heck out of me.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, cars are going, the speed limit's 70 miles an hour. So cars are going, some people are going 70 and some people are going a lot faster.
Right.
And so what happened is as this driver of this 18-wheeler decides to make this illegal U-turn, this is what we know from the news, obviously. He starts making the turn, and there's video inside his cab and facing outward. And so this whole crash was caught on video. But as he's making this turn, this family that was parallel to him, they just couldn't stop the vehicle. You can't stop something on a dime. And it's unexpected for any tractor trailer to make that, or any car to make a maneuver like that, because that's just plain old stupid, right? And then to make that maneuver, and then the car goes immediately under the trailer portion of the truck, the underride, and they all get decapitated. One of them survived for a little bit, but not too long. So that's kind of the nutshell of what's going on with that crash.
So the people who hit him, were they going the same direction as him? So they were behind him?
Yeah, so you would think they're driving parallel, and if you see my hands, the driver just decides to do this.
Oh.
So he's doing this, and they really have no time to react. I mean, and it's 3 people, family members, all from Pompano Beach, Florida, which is South Florida. One of them is a 30-year-old male. Another one is a 37-year-old female, and then another one is a 54-year-old male. So it's a sad day for that family, really for America. 3 people's lives were lost, and there's also interesting twists with this trucking company and driver.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I know that the driver fled Florida, trying to get away. I can only assume. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the governor in Florida held a couple of press conferences. So what happened was, after the crash occurred, the driver, who is an undocumented immigrant, ended up in California, and Florida wanted to prosecute him here for homicide. Obviously not intentional homicide, but it's still manslaughter. You can't do that kind of stuff and think you're going to get away with it. So they're not prosecuting him because he's, undocumented immigrant or illegal, however you want to use those words. it's really because of the maneuver. Even if that was an American citizen who did that, they're going to get prosecuted. That just needlessly made a U-turn that should never have been made. So they are going after him. He's now since been brought back to Florida. I think the Florida assistant governor flew to California, brought him back to Florida, and he's going to face charges here, an eventual trial, unless he takes a plea. But he's probably looking at a long time in prison for what he did. Again, obviously not intentional, but even if you do stuff unintentional, there's consequences to that. And, we always talk about trucking cases and the dangers of a truck driver if they don't follow the rules of the road. Here, there are some things you asked earlier about the driver. This driver was stopped, and I can't remember the name, if it was Texas or Louisiana, one of those states, I'm trying to remember, where they asked him certain questions on his ability to read English, because that's one of the requirements that you have when you're driving a truck, is to read, because there are signs on the road. Like in this one, they had that sign that it's official use, for official use only, to make that turn. I mean,
which I still say, it doesn't. The sign, you shouldn't need a sign to tell you that that's a bad idea.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely with you. That's just a bad decision on his part, and that decision is unfortunately costly for a couple of people. But yeah, you're right. You don't need, that's just basic 101 common sense, like we all say. I mean, but I don't know that there's that much common sense with in this world. There's common understandings. We all know you shouldn't make U-turns when people are going parallel to you at 70 miles an hour. But hey, people still do it, and you see that still happens. So the driver was pulled over and was asked by the officer in that other state if he could read, and he couldn't read. And so really, he should have never been allowed to continue driving, because again, the dangers of not, one, if you can't read, how do you know the rules of what's going on? What are you supposed to follow? Because every driver has to attest that they've read those federal motor carrier safety rules. And they also have complied with the commercial driver license manual for the state that they're licensed in. Now, he was licensed in California. So the question really becomes is, should he have been allowed to drive after that? The answer is no, but, is there liability against that state, police? Potentially. There may be a cause of action there, because had they done their job, maybe this guy doesn't continue driving, or maybe he still finds a way to continue to drive. So a couple of things that we have there is he shouldn't have been driving, number one. And then number two, what about the company that allowed him to drive and allowed this? There's a statute in place that if you aid in someone committing a violation of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration rules or statutes, you're also on the hook for aiding and abetting that. And one of the things we know about the company has some liability as well here.
It should, absolutely. Yeah. They hired this guy, and clearly he should not have been behind the wheel of a truck.
Right. And what do we know about the company? I mean, this is crazy. And so I looked up the company on there's a website called Safe Assist, which is through the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and they give you the background on every company. You can find details on them. Is it a new company? Is it an older company? What did you know about the company? Sort of like before we talked about brokers in the past, before a broker decides to assign a load to a specific motor carrier, like White Hawk Carriers Inc. That was the name of the motor carrier that is, under scrutiny right now for, one, allowing this driver on the road who doesn't even know how to read. And two, I think the bigger problem here is, and their representatives may be looking at some criminal liability as well in Florida. But the problem they have there is for the families, I think, White Hawk, according to Safe Assist website. So if we look on the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they have a website, and on their website, it allows you to look up insurance information. And when I looked it up, they didn't have any insurance, which is crazy to believe that this 18-wheeler is on the road causing damage to, anyone on the road, and yet they don't have insurance, which to me just is mind-boggling.
They have no insurance at all?
No insurance. No insurance. So I'm sure the insurance companies are happy about that, but
Yeah, well,
we'll
that's
see.
really unfortunate for the surviving family members, or the people who the relatives of the people who passed.
Yeah, it's horrible. But I know there's a criminal investigation right now, and there's a subpoena that was just issued to White Hawk Carriers, and they're asking for the typical stuff that we would normally ask for in the preservation letter. So they're asking for his personnel file, meaning the personnel file the company has on this individual, when they hired him, why they hired him, did they get a copy of his resume? I think we really want to know, how did he pass in California the commercial driver's license test? Because in Florida, I know there's been some sting operations in Jacksonville. I saw some news on that where you had people who were coming into the testing site and they had a little hole in their shirt with a camera, and people were feeding them the answers as they're taking the test. This is crazy what people will do to get in there and drive. I think it's fine for people to drive. Just get your license the right way.
Right.
Study and get your license. This way you don't put everybody on the road in danger. I mean, today I got a case all the way out in Arizona where a guy lost, almost all his teeth from this crash, on top of all the orthopedic injuries, all because the driver wasn't paying attention. Another truck driver wasn't paying attention and smashed into him. So going back to this case, I think it's got some implications for truck drivers nationwide. I think they're cracking down on that now, which is a good thing. The last thing we need is more truck drivers that don't know how to read road signs, because again, it puts Evan, it puts me, you, and Carrie, it puts everybody really, at danger here.
Yeah.
I want to get on the road and I want to make sure that no one smashes into me, or people know how to read road signs, or understand that red means red and doesn't mean go, and all that kind of stuff. Sort of like common understandings or common sense, but like you said before, you would never do it. I mean, you wouldn't expect someone to do it, but they did.
How did he get after the accident? Did he flee the scene? Like, how did he get the opportunity? Did he even leave the state?
So my understanding is after the crash occurred, like there's videos of him from Florida Highway Patrol, because they all have the vest cam,
Sure.
and some of them even have on their vehicles there's cameras. So a lot of times they record, and in this case, when you have a homicide, they're recording everything. So you can see his demeanor, and maybe we can show a clip while we're putting this on the YouTube. That you can see he's just walking around, everything's normal, no problem. And they let him go because, again, it's not an intentional act. But then once they completed their investigation, and they found out, one, that he's, undocumented with no papers, can't read, he's got some major issues. So eventually he found his way to California. And in California, the Florida governor wanted him brought back here. So eventually they took him into custody in California and then brought him back here to Florida.
So he wasn't hiding in California. He was able to be found at his residence, or presumably somewhere, some family member or something to that effect.
Yeah. I don't know exactly the details on that, on how they found him, but apparently they had, once Florida wanted him, California had picked him up. So I know there's friction between the two governors, but one has nothing to do with the other in this case.
That shouldn't have anything to do. Yeah, that shouldn't factor into this. I would hope that both would agree on that. So, back to the carrier, I'm really fascinated by this insurance aspect. How does a trucking company operate with no insurance? Isn't there some sort of a check and balance, or shouldn't there be some sort of a check and balance to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. There's definitely a check and balance. So what happens is, usually to get your DOT number, that's Department of Transportation number, and then an MC number, which is a motor carrier number, you have to prove insurance, and you have to take an oath that you're going to continue to provide insurance. And what happened, this is all I can assume right now because I haven't gotten into the details, is that the insurance company paid for that first month of insurance. Sorry, the motor carrier paid for that first month of insurance, but then the insurance lapsed because it says it wasn't effective. And this was, I checked this a couple of days after the crash, just out of curiosity, because I put a post on LinkedIn, and it had a lot of traction with a lot of people really upset and pissed off at what happened. Because again, needlessly, these people died for no reason. So you have that. But there's regulations up the wazoo that I'm sure were not followed here against this company. And I'm sure they've shut down this company. What did we say? It was White Hawk?
White Hawk, yeah.
White Hawk Carriers. And there may be potentially other defendants. We talked about the state that stopped him, and that police department may be on the hook for continuing or aiding and abetting. But I think you also have here, we've talked in the past about brokers, and brokers allowing, if you're looking to put a motor carrier or a trucking company on the road, and you look at Safe Assist, which is that website, or call them the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and you see there's no insurance, why in the world are you giving this company a load?
They probably didn't check, or they just didn't care. They just needed somebody at that moment. I mean, obviously, I don't know the details either, but what else could it be? Why else would you risk that? It's just so crazy to me.
Yeah, so I think there's problems for a lot of people up the chain here, and hopefully the family gets justice here, although it seems like a little tough one here with a lack of insurance. But the broker may have coverage, and then think about the different avenues that they would have against potentially, again, and I'm not saying this is a cause of action, but I would definitely look into it, against the people who pulled him over, the police department, either in Texas or Louisiana, where he got pulled over. And then maybe even, I don't know what the law is in California, but why allow someone who doesn't have papers, a driver's license? I don't know. Those are things to look into, is what I would look into, to see, is there a possible action here or cause of action against those entities, because the White Hawk Carriers doesn't have any insurance. Big loss for the community with these three people, and then an unfortunate situation.
So presumably, as far as we know, the license he had was a legitimate driver's license?
Legitimate driver's license.
So he had to have somehow forged papers or something, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know what the requirements are in California to get a driver's license. Maybe you just have to show up and you get a driver's license. I think it's a little different here in Florida. So I just don't know the answer to that.
Wow. What a crazy story. What's your biggest takeaway from this, as far from a standpoint of legal action? What if you had to put your Nostradamus cap on? Who do you think's rolling on this one?
Yeah. So, first, the family under Florida law, either the spouse or the children will be able to make claims on behalf of the survivors. Also, the parents, if there's no spouse or children, will be able to make claims here. But I would definitely, file an action against the individual driver. Good luck collecting $1 from that person. I mean, He's going to be in prison if he has any money. It's all gone to the defense of this case.
And I got to believe he doesn't have his own insurance.
Yeah, I doubt that. I highly, highly doubt that. I mean, this seems like a shoddy type of operation here, based on what I've seen in the news. Again, only what I've seen in the news, and what I see. If they can't afford or they don't have insurance coverage, it's problematic. So they're on the hook. Potentially the brokers are on the hook. I don't know what he was hauling, but potentially the people, the shippers, if they knew anything about this driver or this company, they may be on the hook as well. So there's a lot to look into for getting justice for this family.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. And thank you for listening to today's episode of Road to Recovery. Illegal maneuvers by tractor trailers can cause devastating harm, but families do have rights and legal recourse. If you or someone you love has been impacted by a trucking accident, please visit shockheadlaw.com to learn how Sagi and his team can help. Also, be sure to subscribe to our channel, leave us a review. We very much appreciate it. Sagi, thanks so much for relaying this story to us. It's very fascinating, very tragic, but certainly something that is valuable to know.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.